Mandatory mini camp is in the books, and we're here to talk all things from Ashburn. Also, things in Commanders land are heating up. We got an ownership update. Chase Young is back in the building, and there's plenty to discuss with number 99. Are the Commanders a Hard Knocks candidate? And is there a quarterback competition in DC? We got a lot to discuss. But as always, welcome to the Sidelines Washington podcast, brought to you by the Sidelines Sports Network, where we take command for the SSN as per always. I'm your host and head of NFL operations here, Parker Hamlet, joined, of course, by my illustrious co-host and the host of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Can't forget that, Mr. Joshua Kirby. If you happen to see our ugly mugs, make sure you guys subscribe and click the bell to turn notifications so you are notified when all the latest drops here for the Sidelines Washington podcast on YouTube. Of course, if you're listening to us in the audio realm, make sure you leave a rating and review. Drop an emoji, leave us a 5-star rating. It goes a long way, guys. Believe it or not. And of course, if you want to find the Silence Washington podcast on all platforms, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok, for God's sakes, click the description below, whether you're listening or watching, and click the link tree. It'll take you everywhere you need to go for the Silence Washington podcast. So, like I said, Josh, it may be the off season, but we do have a lot to discuss today because we got a lot of significant updates, and it seems like there's a lot of traction in a lot of departments that we were kind of wanting some clarification on our last episode. So I say we start with the good news. You say we start with the good news?
Any news in DC is good. Let me rephrase that. It's better to talk about good news when it comes to DC and football, because the bad news always turns out to be very, very bad.
Yes. And like with our fresh little reboot here on the Silence Washington podcast, we did put a lot of emphasis on the fact that there's a lot to be excited about. And I think we should just open off the show with the good news because we did get an ownership update. Josh Harris did meet with the NFL Finance Committee, and the Commanders sale is expected within a month or two. And we actually got some details coming out of this as well. Some of this is going to seem a little long-winded, but there is a lot of juicy information here. Some of the league owners, of course, were concerned that there were, some complications with the deal where it stood. That was where our last update was at. Of course, there is a down payment of $5.85 billion that would include a $3.75 billion of equity, $1.1 billion of secured debt, and a $1 billion of unsecured debt. Of course, in addition, Snyder would get a 50% of the incremental increase in the Commanders' gross revenue over the subsequent 2 years that will be paid out to the team's cash flow. Snyder reportedly thinks the two parties will split $400 million, while Harris believes $200 million will be split down the middle. Add all that up, and the total purchase value is $6.05 billion. So I'm not one of these big numbers guys, but that's a lot of change we're talking about here. And like I said in the last episode, man, this isn't just a matter of handshakes here. We're talking major dough being circumvented throughout this deal across the grand scheme of it all. So some other quotes coming out of this entire situation is, it's going well. I'm hopeful because of the inspired aspect and their enthusiasm and their track record that they're all committing, saying, well, if that doesn't work, then I'll make it right. Either way, we're going to make it right. So we're just trying to work through these final details, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to. I would imagine something in mid to late July would be the earliest we'd call it league meeting. Of course, Jim Irsay has plenty to say about it, because when does he not have a lot to say about anything? He says he knows that it can be smoke and mirrors. And, he put out a bunch of other things that honestly I don't even think are really worth getting into, to be 100% honest with you. But I think the meat and potatoes of this, Josh, is that the money people are doing money people things. And it is now being reported that either July 20th or August 8th are potential dates that the league will vote on the official Commander sale. Of course, right now it is just an agreement in principle. So we could potentially get this thing wrapped up before training camp even concludes. Of course, Ron Rivera said that's the best case scenario. So now that we got through all the boring money talk, what do you make of the headlines that we are nearing closer and closer to the ownership change becoming official? Do you think this is going to happen at the end of July, maybe the beginning of August? Like, where are you kind of standing with all of it?
I mean, I don't really care how much the media says it's getting closer. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. It's like repetition. We've heard it so many times. We thought the team might have been sold a couple months back, maybe a year ago, under certain circumstances and based off what the members of the media are saying. I honestly don't care anymore until it's 100% official, because people can keep saying, we're getting closer, we're getting closer, we're getting closer. And some parties might drag their feet, and this sale could go on even longer. Who knows? Because we're just two people sitting in front of a mic talking about what the Washington Commanders. We have no idea if this team will get sold tomorrow, or maybe it's 3 weeks down the line, maybe it's another month down the line. That's why, until it is 100% signed, sealed, delivered to Josh Harrison Company, it just doesn't phase me, because they can keep saying, we're getting closer, we're getting closer. And 3 months away, they might be saying the same thing, because you and me both know how complicated this deal is. And knock on wood here, stuff could go wrong that could delay this sale.
No, yeah, and of course, I was reading all that big money talk there, and there's secured debt, unsecured debt, distribution of funds. I mean, there's a lot of complications here. And last week on the episode, we kind of referenced that, so I did want to give a little bit of clarification this week on the specifics of that kind of stuff and why there are some roadblocks here, because this is a large sale, the largest in sports history, at least probably until the Hornets get sold. I thought that was an interesting headline coming out today. Michael Jordan officially selling the Charlotte Hornets. God, I almost
I
butchered that, but
guarantee it doesn't take as long as the Commanders,
yeah,
though.
and that's a whole nother aspect of it as well, because like you got to put all these guys in the same room. They all got to pass and vote on this stuff. And my thing is, why can't they just do it like you talk about you and me just being guys on a mic? Just let these guys download Zoom and get this thing done, man. I mean, the agreement's already been made in principle. I think it's going to have to something huge or significant is going to happen for this deal to not happen before August 8th, in my humble opinion. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and claim to know the ins and outs of how all this stuff works in regards to sales and I'm not one of the big money people. I'm not an accountant. I'm just a guy on a Washington Commanders podcast. But I think the meat and potatoes of this really is July 20th, August 8th, two dates that we are narrowed down to in regards to when it could become, as you said, signed and sealed. And I think that is exciting news, because now once that is in the rear view, we can truly focus on what is happening on the gridiron. And speaking of the gridiron, Mr. 99, a guy who was a heavy topic of conversation last week, Chase Young, is back, says he's bringing the juice, says he's feeling explosive. And, I something that we talked about at nauseum on the last episodes is the fact that OTAs are strictly voluntary. Kurt Rivera emphasized this as well as he spoke to the media, says he's not going to punish people for not being there. And as much negative crap as we heard about Chase Young throughout the media, I tell you, there was a whole lot of microphones in his face, and there was a whole lot of people happy to see him there. And I was definitely one of the people that was happy to see him there. And, it was interesting seeing Chase in action. Of course, still wearing that knee brace. You know, Sometime back, of course, having that season-ending injury, and his very slow return to the football field, which was, of course, very well documented, and of course, a big talking point amongst the Washington Commanders fan base as well. And something that Chase really pointed out when he was speaking to the media that I really like, Josh, was when people were kind of pointing out the brace, because I mean, it has been some time now. I don't remember the exact. You were actually at the game he was injured, correct?
Yep.
You were. When was that? I just
It
want to
was
narrow it down.
so it was, I don't know the exact date. It was colder outside. I think I'm not sure what month, but they were facing Tampa Bay, and That was the game Tom Brady threw 2 interceptions, and Taylor Heineke had the 10-minute drive to secure a victory by not giving the ball back to the GOAT, Tom Brady.
Well, November 2021, I Googled it while you were
Yes.
living Uncle Ricoing that game you went to. And so that's we're now sitting June 16th of 2023. So a lot of people are wondering why Chase is still wearing that brace. And something I said last week, and I was really this was a good moment for Chase. Chase kind of had a stern look on his face and looked at the report and said, "Because I know how serious my knee injury was, and just how long of a recovery that was, and just how significant the damage was, and how complicated the operation was." Like he said it with his chest, and that's something that I think Commanders fans are really kind of forgetting is that this wasn't your run of the mill, injury. And I'm just like I'm not an accountant, I'm also not a doctor. So do your homework as you will. You will see just how complicated of a process it was for Chase to return. Um, but he one of the good takeaways from this was that he does seem like he's back to his old self. He said, watch the film from today's practice. He was smiling from ear to ear, says he feels night and day in terms of confidence, says that, he uses a lot of things in motivation, kind of referring to all the negativity that, of course, has been connotated with him missing OTAs. Says he's worked really hard to build back strength using lifting, plyometrics, stuff of that, And then, of course, Chase comes back. He's in good health. He says he's the healthiest he's been since pre-injury. And then what happens? We get another report from the media stating, this is according to Dov Kleeman, that the Commanders are open to listening to trade offers for the former second overall pick in 2020. You know, meniscus, ACL, I mean, no matter the designation of the injury, it was going to be a long way back for Chase Young. And he obviously has a lot to prove this year. Big contract year. Of course, the team not deciding to pick up his fifth-year option, at least up to this point. What do you make of the report that the Commanders are open to listening to trade offers for Chase Young? There, of course, he's been connected to the Chiefs. He's been connected to the Steelers. I think all of it, just to be blunt, is bullshit. And I can't think of another word other than bullshit. I mean, that's really the best way to describe it. Because at the end of the day, I really do think that this is nothing more than a distraction. And, I think it's just another thing that Chase Young is going to add to the chip on his shoulder. But do you think there's any legitimacy to this report? And if there is, and if you were the Commanders, would you be open to listening to trade offers for Chase Young?
I don't think the report has a lot of weight to it. Um, I think it would be rather stupid if the Commanders were to trade him away. But yeah, I would say if you were to listen, if there was a massive offer on the table, which I don't think there would be because of his injury, I think you just have to wait out and see, but I honestly don't think there's any weight to this report. I honestly feel like Chase Young stays here and he's working hard on himself. Everybody in the media has said how well Chase Young has been doing. So I I just don't I find it confusing why there would be a report that they're listening to trade offers. I just don't think it's that legitimate, in my opinion.
And I did happen to get a direct message from a blue check mark, and I'm talking about a heavy hitter here, and I'll read it. Good morning. Dov doesn't report he egregiates others. Just an FYI. No legitimacy to the report. So I'm not gonna disclose who sent that, but the person who told me this, I do trust them, and I think if you're seeing any jersey swaps, they will stay in the land of make believe. I do not see Chase Young leaving Ashburn probably ever. To be honest with you,
I have sources too that say sort of along the lines of the same thing, and we have a lot of those on social media.
well, yeah, no, I mean, this wasn't just a random tweet though. Like this was like as soon as I posted the report from Dov, I mean, I got this like almost instantly. And I didn't even tell you that until we started recording because I thought I just kind of wanted to save it for the pod. But I trust the person who told me this, and they've never really lied to me before. So I'll leave it at that. So, I mean, I personally, I think that Chase Young had a huge setback with the injury, and we saw what he is capable of in the 2020 season. And there have been a lot of obstacles for Chase Young, but he is still one of the most talented defensive linemen in the National Football League. I mean, he's just an absolute physical freak. I mean, just some of the best college tape I've ever seen. People are going to talk about the sack numbers, but at the end of the day, we are talking about, at his best, a top 100 player in the National Football League. And the numbers haven't shown it yet. And he does have to prove it this year, ultimately. No matter how talented he is, he does have to prove it this year. But there's no weight to these reports, okay? I mean, people just need to understand this. Like, this is not a guy that they are going to deal even if we're halfway through the season and he hasn't hit the quarterback once. I mean, this is a guy who is going to at least play out his rookie contract. And if things don't come to fruition in the nation's capital, he is going to take his services somewhere else, probably to a contender. But we'll just have to see how this entire thing plays out. Really, it's still a little too early. We still haven't seen how Chase is going to play in real game time reps. We got a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel last year. We saw some good stuff out of him. Statistically, it doesn't really pop out on paper, but at the end of the day, Chase Young is more of a high impact player than that. And I think he is going to prove that he is worth every dime that the Commanders are going to give him. And I can lock that in here in June and say that I do think Chase Young's going to have a big bounce back season. And, a guy, let's kind of stay on the defensive side of the ball here, right? Another guy that we kind of had similar, discourse about last year was Daron Payne. And, Daron's setting high standards for himself this year. He said he went into last year with the goal of 10 sacks. He got 11.5. He says this year he's shooting for 13 sacks. Of course, you're going to have Fedarian Mathis coming back. They're going to have the Alabama wall in full effect. 13 sacks Daron Payne is going for. And, proving it really is the theme across this defensive line outside of guys like Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, who already got their big contract extensions. Montez Sweat, kind of talking about how Daron gave the blueprint for getting paid. And something that Montez told the media since we last recorded was, we can talk potential, but we got to do what Allen and Payne are doing. These guys got to get to the quarterback. I mean, Chase Young, of course, is one of the most versatile defensive ends in the league. I mean, the speed, the strength, I mean, the ability to cover running backs out of the backfield, the ability to rush the pass or bat down passes. I mean, the guy can do it all, but we need him to finish plays a lot like we need Montez to. And I was very glad to hear Montez kind of put some emphasis on that. So Jamin Davis, of course, spoke to the media as well. Speaking of another guy who's got a lot to prove, second year of his rookie contract. He says he's got a lot left on the bone. He said he needs to step up. And, something I kind of want to talk about, Josh, for a second is we kind of mentioned Jamin Davis on consecutive episodes here. And, there are reports coming out of minicamp that Khaleke Hudson's look great. And in the absence of Jamin Davis, who, of course, had a little cleanup procedure, I think James is going to be back on the field. Hopefully, obviously, we don't know 100% when he's going to be back, but Rivera says it shouldn't interfere with anything significant in regards to like his participation in football activities. But I just got to ask you, and maybe I'm kind of poking the bear on this one. Like I said, I've had a lot of conversations about Jamin Davis in front of this mic on this podcast, but would you say that Jamin got significantly better? Because, I mean, when he was speaking to the media, I mean, it was nice to see the young man exude confidence, and I'm not mad about that whatsoever. But would you say he took a big step forward in 2022?
Yeah, from when he got drafted to now, I feel like he made a big step because everybody wasn't that high on him when he got drafted. But I feel like he made extraordinary steps forward, and I think the trend continues going into this season, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. Like, I'm going to put some specifications on this here, right? Because to me, there's a difference between hating on a player and just giving straight up analysis. So his missed tackle percentage dropped from 14.3% to 7.3%. He totaled 47 tackles last year, which is an upgrade from the 21 tackles he had as a rookie. His 2021 PFF grade was a 46.8, and his 2022 PFF grade was a 62.9. So that's an over 15% increase in PFF. So, I mean, I guess I'm just not quite understanding what significant strides he really took on the field. I mean, JDR mentioned himself that, there was a lot of WTF plays from Jamin Davis, and he wants him to be able to clean those up. And I'm glad the young man's making more tackles, and I'm glad that, he's trending upward in the right direction. But at the same time, like, I almost feel like as I kind of cycle through the media for any type of Washington Commanders type website, you just constantly see like these headlines of like such and such is impressing in training camp, such and such is impressing in minicamp, or such and such took a huge leap from last year. But the numbers and statistics don't lie, and just nothing about Jamin last year really, really like sticks out to me. And you know, I just got finished reading the book Atomic Habits, and they say if you get 1% better every single day, that over time you do gradually. I mean, success rate goes up by a large margin. And I'm not gonna sit here and denounce him because he is improving in certain categories, but I still need to see more from him at the end of the day. And I think this defense still needs more from Jamin Davis at the end of the day. I mean, it's going to be easy for Khaleke Hudson to walk through go through the motions in mini camp, training camp, and look like the guy when we're doing 7-on-7s and stuff. But real game reps, they seem like they're banking a lot off of the season finale against Dallas, and I don't know, like I think we do need to do a little bit better in regards to like saying people are taking these strides, these leaps forwards, and having the data to back it up and show it. Because as much as people don't want to say PFF is a metric, I didn't just give PFF numbers there. I mean, there were small incremental increases in certain statistics that were encouraging, but there's a lot of numbers that I didn't read that just jump out at you. So just something that I kind of wanted to point out, because I do feel like there is this discourse almost that Jamin had just this huge leap in year two. And I mean, he did play better, but it's still not first round draft pick linebacker great. So just something I wanted to clarify and say on the pod, because as the year progresses, I mean, I'm going to hold Jamin to a standard, and I feel like everybody else should too, especially if we're expecting him to we're expecting everybody else on this defense, Josh, to play great, So why shouldn't we expect that from Jamin as well? I mean, that's another first round draft pick on this defense. So especially when you got guys like Cam Crow who drafted in the 7th round, just absolutely balling out. So last thing about the defense, JDR quoted in saying that, the defense has been very undisciplined in creating turnovers, and they're working on the fundamentals of executing. And of course, he wants the defense to start fast and create more turnovers. Of course, I feel like that was a big contributing factor in them drafting Emmanuel Forbes. So just some other observations coming out of minicamp. We can go to both sides of the ball here. Kazmeir Allen, undrafted free agent, turning a lot of heads in Ashburn. Of course, Ron Rivera speaking on this, saying there's a couple guys out there, but one of the more notable names, and one I'm going to have to look up so I can say it properly. But he's a young man. We got him out of UCLA. Kazmeir Allen. I hope I'm saying his name right. He'll wear number 10 out there. He's played some slot, some wide receiver, some running back, and he returned both kickoffs and punts for them. And he did in the bowl game, all-star games as well. So he's a young man that most certainly has gotten our attention. He's a young guy that we went out and tried to make sure we were able to recruit and bring him in as a free agent. So Kazmeir Allen, 5'8", 176. This is the overall draft assessment of him. Smallest speedster who will need to prove to NFL evaluators that he is more than a gadget option despite his explosiveness. Allen just scored 11 touchdowns on offense during his UCLA career. His primary duties were of the catch and run variety underneath. So to me, he sounds like a great fit for an Eric Bieniemy offense. So he'll be an interesting name to monitor, kind of a dark horse here coming out of minicamp, training camp as well. So just kind of wanted to kind of throw that out in the ether, because there's always that one guy throughout this, season of the off season that I feel like kind of ends up making a name for himself. And, while the top of the wide receiver depth chart, of course, is very well cemented, there are those dark horse guys underneath now that guys like Cam Sims are gone. You've heard of other guys like, Dax Milne having a great camp as well so far. So it's going to be interesting to see how the bottom end of the wide receivers plays out, especially now there's a little bit more competition at the bottom end. As far as competition is concerned, we can make the transition now to left guard. Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul are duking it out. Apparently, Cornelius Lucas is coaching these guys up. Sadiq Charles says he's very comfortable left guard, when he is healthy, that is. Says he has a skill set, says he hopes to stay healthy. And of course, that's Ron Rivera's biggest talking point with Sadiq Charles. He says, well, first and foremost, we always know Sadiq had the skill set to do it. He's got to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing right for him right now. I mean, that's always seemed to be the issue. If you go back and look at the time he's played, something has come up, whether it's been the calf, the ankle, the shoulder. You hope he stays healthy because he has a skill set. He's got the physical makeup. And again, it's just a matter of being able to stay healthy. Chris Paul, Josh, is a guy that honestly I was really high on coming out of the draft last year, one of the offensive linemen they drafted pretty late. Do you think that Sadiq Charles is a long-term answer at guard here? Or do you feel like this experiment is inevitably going to fall on its head?
I've seen some good out of Sadiq. I think he has the potential. I just don't know if he can take it all the way, take his potential fully, if you get what I'm saying. But I mean, he's good on this team, I say, the Commanders, but I'm not sure how long his talent lasts, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, you can be talented, but I mean, at the end of the day, you are only as good as you are available.
Yep.
And this guy is on the Ashburn cycling squad. I mean, he is always on a trainer bike. He is always hurt. And, maybe this is the year that he pieces it all together. Guy's got a great sense of style. I'm not hating on Sadiq Charles at all whatsoever, but he's had an uphill battle since coming into the league, coming out of LSU. And there were questions in multiple departments with him when we drafted him. And I will say there are moments where he's on the field and he pops and he shows that physicality and he shows that athleticism, but there just isn't enough consistency, and we're not talking about a guy who's played an all pro level like a guy like Chase Rouillet. And look how he was done. I say how he was done like it was some, old yellow type of situation. But at the end of the day, I mean, even a guy who plays an all pro level like Chase Rouillet can see the door. So I really do think this is a Hail Mary for Sadiq Charles in regards to his career here with the Washington Commanders. And I do think Chris Paul has a legitimate shot at starting at guard here. And I'm going to be very intrigued to see how that battle plays out moving forward. So obviously a lot of things to watch in Commanders land and a lot of things to talk about. And we wouldn't be able to sit here and talk about it on the show today without thanking one of our sponsors, Homage. Make sure you take a moment and use promo code SSN Sports 21 for an additional 20% off of your next purchase at www.homage.com. Of course, you can download the free Homage app today. There's great gear, great apparel. Of course, take advantage of our limited time offer with Homage using promo code SSN Sports 21, additional 20% off your order. Homage.com. Check them out. Competition being the theme kind of throughout this one. Sam Howell, QB1, the guy, at least that's what we've heard up to this point, has been getting all the first team reps. But Ron Rivera very much specified that this is still a quarterback competition. When Jacoby Brissett, of course, addressed the media this week, very well reversed and said, in regards when he was asked when he was going to start getting first team reps, we will cross that bridge when we get to it, end quote. Santana kind of pointed out something on Field Pass. Make sure you guys check out the Washington Commanders YouTube channel. They got a bunch of great content there, whether it be OTAs, minicamp, all of it there, and it's very well done. He says that, Sam had a whole year as a rookie, but now he has a whole year to be a rookie under a new offense. And, Jacoby has the acumen, has the experience, has the savviness of a veteran. And he also said that he would not come here if he did not have a chance to start. Ron says that, Jacoby and Sam have worked together in harmony. And that's great to hear. And I don't expect anything less from Jacoby Brissett or Sam Howell. But Sam, of course, reportedly coming out of OTAs and throughout minicamp has been a little up and down, reportedly. And this is coming from Zach Selby, staff writer for the Washington Commanders, friend of the show. Hello, Zach. I really want some food, man. Cook it up. He reportedly said Howell looks solid for the majority of practice, complete 15 and 24 passes and 11 on 11, 7 to 7 on blitz drills. The only rough spot came around the middle of practice when he was 1 of 5 with an interception. It was an impressive play by Khalid Hudson, who managed to crowd the ball away from the receiver for running down the sideline. So, and this is, of course, one of a couple of reports of Sam kind of struggling in certain moments. Of course, Ron has specify that it is a competition, but he does feel like at this point Sam has done enough to be the starting quarterback. Charles Leno kind of commented on the media as well, saying that he can see Sam's kind of calm demeanor despite him, being at the infancy of his career of being a starting NFL quarterback. You had Jahan Dotson come out and say he's the guy. Josh, I'm just going to be blunt. Is there a quarterback competition in DC?
Well, the trend of quarterback in Washington playing football, anything can happen. You can't rule it out, but as of right now, I feel like it's Howell's job to lose. But again, quarterback playing football in Washington, D.C., literally anything can happen because I've been
It's
a
like the most
fan.
dangerous job in the world, or at least in
When you're coming to
sports,
Washington playing
especially
quarterback.
in the NFL. I mean, look, I'm just going to keep it a buck. I don't think this is a competition. I think Jacoby Brissett is a failsafe. I think that they are going to say what they need to say with a mic in front of their face in order to make this thing look like it's something. But I think behind closed doors, Sam is perceived as the guy, and I think Jacoby is perceived as the cleanup crew. So I really don't think Sam is. I really don't think we're in a situation here where Sam's just going to go out and make this coaching staff look bad and fall flat on his face. I just think Jacoby is the type of guy where if something impromptu does happen, whether it be an injury to Sam or just Lauren, just anything comes up, you have a guy like Jacoby Brissett who is a true professional that can step in. And I'm glad that Jacoby has that chip on his shoulder. I'm glad that he wants to start. But at the end of the day, Sam Howell, as you said, this is his job to lose. And Ron, of course, glowing endorsement for Jacoby Brissett. I think Jacoby's shown us some things we've really caught people's attention. We would talk about Jacoby almost as much as we talk about Sam. I just think as we go through this process and until we play games, it'd be unfair to start making assessments. Again, there's a lot of confidence. And, I just feel like if this was the case with Jacoby, this extremely conservative coaching staff has shown in the past that they are going to put their guy at the forefront no matter what's going on. And I feel like if Jacoby was the guy, Jacoby would be getting the first team reps. And you could make the argument that these reps are more valuable to a guy like Sam Howell, who, hasn't had OTAs or minicamp as the quarterback one for a National Football League franchise. And that is a plausible argument. But at the end of the day, I still think, like Jahan said, we got our guy. He's shown the poise. He's already shown the confidence. He's already shown he knows what to do with the ball. People are going to have, people are going to have bad practices. That's just a part of the league. I haven't heard any reports yet that he's spiking the ball in the dirt like Carson Wentz was last year. So, I'm not going to put much stock in a bunch of coach speak, just to be honest with you. So, Jahan, of course, had some observations as we kind of move through minicamp on Emmanuel Forbes saying that, he watched tape and he was like, I think he's good, but I don't know. And he said after seeing Forbes on the field that he knows how good he is and he understands why he was drafted in the first round and he understands what the hype is all about. So a couple quick more bullet points coming out of minicamp. Warren Sapp, of course, back in attendance, which is awesome to see. Warren absolutely brings the energy. I was a little bit skeptical of him being in attendance just due to the negative connotations that were being associated with the Commanders, compounded with his own personal issues. But it seems like he's bringing the energy. It seems like he's going to be a constant, a regular for the Washington Commanders at this point in the offseason. I'm glad to see him, kind of giving that Hall of Fame experience to this defensive line. And speaking of iron and sharpening iron, Eric Bieniemy just absolutely laying into these guys. This comes from Lionel William on Twitter. This was making rounds across the week. Eric Bieniemy just yanked someone out of the huddle for not going hard enough. His exact words were, "Get out of the huddle. Ain't wasting no effing reps." Eric Bieniemy was fired up. You love to hear it, Josh. That's something we've almost talked in nauseum about, but it's just like music to my ears every single time. And Jahan kind of came out and said it's awesome to have somebody who holds you to such a high standard and wants success out of you. That's all he wants to see. He wants to see you succeed at all times. I ran into him yesterday after meetings, and he said, "You have so much potential. I want to make sure I get it out of you." That's what you want in someone. So the Eric Bieniemy culture continues to build and continues to amass in Ashburn, and you love to see it. Of course, I think there's some other guys that have turned heads at minicamp as well. like I said, Dax Milne strung together a really solid couple performances during minicamp, apparently. Percy Butler balling out, Brian Robinson Jr. looking like a bulldozer. So a lot of really cool stuff coming out of minicamp. A lot of the young guys fighting for their spot on the 53 and fighting to show that they belong on this Washington Commanders roster. And honestly, it's really refreshing because I feel like not too long ago we really were a very old roster, a very old team. So kind of seeing this youth movement has been very refreshing and very revitalizing, in my opinion. And competition brings out the best in everybody. And, they tried out kicker Austin Jones as well to compete, which I think they need just as bad as much help as they can get at kicker. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Uh, Speaking of help, I want to thank our other sponsor on the show. That is Prize Picks. And if you want to put a dent in your first interaction with Prize Picks, you can get some help by using promo code SSNWFT for a $100 instant deposit bonus match with the free Prize Picks app. If you're a gambling man, download the Prize Picks app today and take advantage of our limited time offer with Prize Picks. That's promo code SSNWFT for a $100 instant deposit bonus match. Of course, terms apply depending on your state, region, all that good stuff. So check out our limited time offer with Prize Picks. And Josh, just a couple more headlines here. Honestly, I was very enticed by this. Former defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier visiting the Washington Commanders. He's a former Packers defensive coordinator. Apparently there's some interesting stuff going on with him. He's still under contract with the Buffalo Bills. Says he's taking a break from football. Apparently he was making his rounds around Ashburn. I think that's going to be an interesting situation to monitor. If they can add him and his defensive mind to this room, I think that's going to do nothing but help. It sounds like a match made in heaven with Coach Jack Del Rio. Of course, all the specifics with that, we're already in bad graces with the Bills as it is, due to the whole JD McKissick blow up last year. So I think we need to kind of take it easy on the Bills. But still, very interesting to see someone saying they're taking a break from football and see them kind of making their rounds around the league. Apparently, Leslie Frazier says he wants to come back and coach next season, but apparently, going on a little bit of a tour here, stopping by Ashburn, which I thought was very interesting. Of course, the Commanders hosting Torrance, which I thought was awesome. He met with Jeremy Reeves, Terry McLaurin, Ron Rivera. He's breaking the huddle. You love to see that stuff. I'm really glad to see the Washington Commanders doing stuff like that. I mean, sometimes it truly is bigger than football. And something else we mentioned, Josh. I mean, how could we forget? And that is that the Washington Commanders are being considered for this year's NFL Hard Knocks. This report comes from Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. Start of the quote: "The NFL could tell the Bears, Saints, or Jets tough crap. The extra layer of intrigue could actually make the show better. The easiest course would be to give the gig to the Commanders, but how could the league, which ultimately runs the show, properly fashion the story of the team without fully delving into the Dan Snyder angle? If NFL Films tells the truth about the sale of the team, it makes the league bad. If NFL Films brushes any of it under the rug, folks like us will call the league out." So I think the Commanders are out of the woods in regards to the Dan Snyder situation, but it is going to take some time for it to truly wash away and for this to feel like a new era. And I don't think we're there yet. So, of course, because of these reports from Mike Florio, a lot of people are speculating that we are going to be chosen for Hard Knocks because a new 2,000 seat bleacher area was installed along the sidelines, which was not there last year, and it is going to be available on a first come first serve basis. So, are they making extra room for a camera crew? Who knows? Do you think Hard Knocks is good business or bad business for the Commanders, Josh? And do you see this happening in the near future?
Well, honestly, I've watched the Browns Hard Knocks, and that gives you the absolute closest look behind the scenes of how an NFL franchise is run, how practices go, all the ins and outs. But honestly, I don't want to see the Commanders on Hard Knocks yet because A, if they were, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I really want to see this. But I'm so busy and I don't want to spend the subscription amount for HBO Max or whatever to watch Hard Knocks that I probably wouldn't even have time to watch, and therefore losing sleep because I'd be staying up late watching it. So, just my angle of things. But I think Hard Knocks has its goods and its bads. Um, for covering their select team each year. But yeah, I would like for them to wait on the Commanders until I have a little bit more time. I can actually watch each week and be like, man, this is pretty cool, and actually enjoy it, and not actually rush through each episode just to say I watched it.
So here's my thing. We with Hard Knocks, if you're not familiar with Hard Knocks, it is a full-time camera crew from HBO that follows the teams. I mean, throughout the buildings, during the games, at home with their families. I mean, it's the whole shebang. I watched pretty much the entire season with the Indianapolis Colts, whose quarterback at the time was Carson Wentz, which I thought was interesting. I almost felt like I was doing homework, but it gives you a really good idea of who the players are, who the coaches are, and gives you a really in-depth look at their season, right? And because of that, you know, with every TV show, you want drama. And with you wanting drama, I don't know a situation better in the National Football League than the Washington Commanders. And with the ownership being changed, the rebrand, I mean, young quarterback getting the nod, uh, exciting offensive coordinator entering the fray. I mean, there's just so much going on here. But the unfortunate reality is that there's, of course, things going on that I'm sure the NFL does not want to shed light on, because Dan Snyder, unfortunately, is going to be the elephant in the room in most of those situations. And are they going to speak on him? Are they going to want to speak on him? More likely not. I'm all for it. I've always wanted to see my favorite team on Hard Knocks. And if the Commanders are cool with it, I'm cool with it. I've got no beef in that regard. But I definitely could see where the NFL is trying to avoid, any skeletons coming out of their closet. So I'm not going to believe it till I see it, but I'm definitely down for it. And I do have an HBO Max subscription, Josh, if you need the login. And, personally, I'm all for the Commanders on Hard Knocks, but we'll see. I think the bleachers development is certainly interesting. And, if cameras are there, they're going to get some of that training camp. And the training camp schedule, of course, officially released. Tickets free to the public, free being the key word. So if you've never been to training camp, get your tickets, show up. We're going to be there. I think I'm going to be the 28th and the 13th and the 19th. We haven't really narrowed it down yet, but your Sidelines crew is going to be there. They have dates varying from July 27th all the way to August 19th. So, and they've got, of course, some days with certain themes. The NFL back together Sunday or Saturday. You got the Washington Salute Military Appreciation Day. You have the Kids Day. So a bunch of great activities they're doing at training camp. I go every single year, whether it was Ashburn or Richmond. I think it's an awesome experience. You get to meet players, you get to interact with other fans. And, honestly, I think it's an overall really awesome experience. It's going to be a little bit of a hike for some people in Ashburn, but I urge all who have never experienced it to make the trip out to training camp. And SeatGeek, of course, being where you get those tickets. We actually posted the link that people can click on the Sidelines Washington social media. If you can't find it there, you can find it on the Washington Commander social media. I think it's in the bio. So, yeah, guys, come out to training camp, meet up with us, talk all things Commanders, and have some fun in the summer heat. I think that would be an absolute blast. But, we're not quite at football yet. We're still, here in the depths of the offseason, unfortunately. And, I mean, we're at the point where the Commanders are, posting pictures of the mascot dogs and, talking about all the stuff off the field. And we had one last interesting headline here that I want to discuss before we sign off here on the show. And that is that the Washington Commanders, as we reported on our official social media, are officially kicking the tires on potentially signing running back Kareem Hunt, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cleveland Browns. Of course, you got the Kansas City connection there. Hunt was drafted back in 2017, where his best statistical season. I mean, that was an absolute Cinderella season for him. You had Offensive Player of the Year arguments there, to be honest with you. The next season, Eric Bieniemy takes over as offensive coordinator, and of course, Kareem makes his exodus from the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, with all the off-the-field drama. and goes to Cleveland, kind of being the 1-2 punch with Nick Chubb. Things don't quite come to fruition. Some off the field stuff, demanding to be traded. Either way, Josh, I could make an honest argument that he is the most talented running back in this room if he signs with the Washington Commanders today. And he is definitely the most versatile out of the two. I mean, Gibby, you got your ball security issues. I would go out and probably place money that Kareem is probably the faster of the two backs. He is definitely very elusive, definitely more elusive than Brian Robinson Jr. And I'm not trying to dog our guys, right? Like, I think our guys are really good at what they do. I mean, as far as scat back is concerned, you feel like you got that in Antonio Gibson. Ron Rivera saying he expects this guy to have a big 2023. Of course, they go out and draft Chris Rodriguez, who they said they have a third-round grade on. And my whole thing is, if you have a third-round grade on him, why are you bringing a guy like Kareem Hunt? And then you got B-Rob, who's the bell cow back, the north-south runner. I mean, he is the guy who is going to do the dirty work, if you will. So I feel like if they really felt good about this running back room, why go out and try to inquire about the services of a guy like Kareem Hunt? So the answer to that question, in my opinion, is this is just a request of Eric Bieniemy. I mean, this is a guy we see out on the free agent market who's just extremely talented. If you can get him to come in and buy in on this, then this is a very talented running back coming to a very solid running back room. What do you make of the reports of Kareem Hunt being connected to the Commanders? Do you think this is a good move, a bad move? Would you sign Kareem Hunt?
Based on what I've seen before, I wouldn't hurt to try. I would think that would add a lot of depth to the running back room and maybe some explosive plays from the backfield after Mr. Sam Howell hands it off to such running back. It'd be very cool to see him sign with the burgundy and gold. I mean, yeah, I think it would be good. Time will tell, though, because who knows? But that running back room would definitely get deeper if he signs.
Hosina Anderson, of course, initially reporting it, had to give her due. But I mean, Kareem Hunt, like I said, in my opinion, if he comes to this running back room, he is immediately the most talented running back in this running back core. Mm-hmm. I mean, speed. I mean, once he gets the balls in his hand in open field, I mean, he is just one of the most talented running backs in open field, in my opinion. And a lot of people could honestly argue that he was underutilized with the Cleveland Browns, and that was a big part of his frustration, a big part of him wanting to be traded. But I mean, obviously, it's hard to take away reps from a guy like Nick Chubb, and I almost feel like he's trading him for the same problem coming to the Washington Commanders. You already got a stacked running back room, and who really takes precedence in this? You add Chris Rodriguez to the mix, like I said, with the third-round grade. But I mean, Kareem Hunt, 5K yards from scrimmage so far in his career, nearly 50 touchdowns since 2017, and most importantly, he has been coached by Eric Bieniemy, and he has thrived in an Eric Bieniemy offense, which I think is very important to note. So I think this is really one of those situations where this is just something that Eric Bieniemy wants, and I think it's going to make everybody better, and I think it's certainly going to make the Washington Commanders better. But as minicamp is wrapped up here, OTAs, all that good stuff, we're going to keep this train chugging, man, and it keeps moving on and on and on and on. We're one step closer to training camp. I know this week the players are kind of taking a break. I know they didn't have that additional day of practice. All the players talking about going on vacations and stuff. So, obviously, we are in the midst of the off season, and, but it was very good to see kind of what we're working with, so to speak, coming out of Ashburn, and we are one step closer to training camp. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have here today on the Sidelines Washington podcast. Make sure you guys click the link tree below. Like I said, to find us on all social media. Find us on all audio platforms. Find us on YouTube, on all social medias. Of course, I'm the head of NFL operations here at the Sidelines Sports Network. So if you or anyone is interested in joining one of the fastest rising sport networks in the country, email me, sidelineswft@gmail.com. We are always looking for contributors. Like I said, sidelineswft@gmail.com. Josh, what do you say we do it again next week?
Make it happen, bud.
Until then, this is SSN signing off. Peace.